My name is Connor Ogrijak, and it is an honor to bring my experiences before you today. Although I had hoped...
Speaking up against genocide become anti-Semitism. How is that the same fucking
The meeting will be in order.
4,000 children and students are dead. What is your right to speak if all of us are not free? What does it mean if they can die from you?
Again.
Although I had hoped that my arrival to
Here's
higher
the hearing for Palestinian students. Free Gaza! Free Palestine! Free Gaza! Free Palestine! Palestinian liberation is not anti-Semitism! Palestinian liberation is not anti-Semitism! Palestinian liberation is not anti-Semitism! Palestinians deserve the right to not be genocide. Free Gaza! Free Gaza! Free Gaza!
Mr. Ogrijak, we'll keep trying.
Thank you, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Nadler, and members of the committee.
Palestinians deserve to speak on the genocide of their families.
All right, sit down. You be
Palestinian students
Final warning.
deserve to
Sit down
speak
and be arrested.
on the genocide of their families. Stop silencing Palestinian students. Stop silencing Palestinian students. Stop silencing Palestinian students. They're speaking on the genocide.
Gentleman is recognized.
It is an honor to bring my experiences...
Palestinian students should not be censored. You want to talk about putting money where your mouth is? There are 10,000, over 10,000 Gazans dead and more buried, half of whom are under the age of 18. And you're going to send money and talk about this? Where are the anti-Zionist Jews in this room? Nowhere. So you are not offering a plurality of opinion. You are offering partisanship. And you are offering murder to more Gazans. Free Palestine!
Good morning, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Nadler, and the members of the committee. My name is Jasmine Jordan, and I'm blessed to have the opportunity to speak with you all today. I was raised in the church and homeschooled from preschool through 5th grade. Both of these were crucial in shaping my early upbringing and my worldview. They gave me the strong foundation of moral beliefs and values that the Constitution was founded on. Lessons like iron sharpens iron, be a leader, not a follower, and so help me God are ingrained into every aspect of my character. As I progressed through the public school environment, this strong moral compass guided me throughout my journey, and I carried it with me to college. In spring 2022, I joined Iowa Young Americans for Freedom when I discovered that this organization aligned with the Christian conservative values instilled in me by my church and family. The more involved I became in the club, the more I discovered that the playing field for freedom of speech on college campuses was not equalized. The first time I noticed this was when Iowa YAF hosted Kellyanne Conway as a speaker. In response, I was doxxed in a group chat of over 800 students and was falsely labeled as a Nazi, a token, a white supremacist, and a bigot. Some individuals even expressed that I made them uncomfortable and feared that I might commit a hate crime against them simply because I'm Black and hold conservative principles. These students believe that if you are conservative, you are hateful, support oppression, and only want to benefit straight white men, even though such beliefs are untrue. When we hosted Lieutenant Colonel Allen West speak on campus last year, he spoke on the topic of debunking diversity, equity, and inclusion, and proved that America is not racist. We used chalk advertisements to promote the lecture, which is something many colleges do, to effectively let students know about upcoming events. Immediately, our chalk was altered, which is a violation of school policy. New messages were put in place saying that Allen West is racist and that racism is prevalent in schools, thus critical race theory should be supported. At Allen West's lecture, a protester stood in the back holding a sign that read, "Stop the alt-right, punch your local Nazi today." This is blatant irony. Conservatives are slandered by students and faculty as harmful, yet here's an obvious example of someone openly delivering a violent threat and facing no repercussions. The entitlement continues. I find that when a conservative doesn't want to hear a speaker, they just don't attend the event. But when a leftist doesn't want to hear a speaker, they do everything they can to shut the lecture down. Our club recently hosted Matt Walsh. Students and faculty were willing to do anything to cancel the event just because they found Walsh's speech to be offensive. Some people were so dedicated to silencing our voices that literally as one of us was advertising with chalk, a leftist student was erasing each of those letters with a wipe. We received death threats along with plenty of verbal harassment. That night, before the speaking event, my hallmate, who happened to be the one erasing the chalk, stalked outside of my bedroom door by putting his ear on it to see if I was in my room because he was just so outraged by my involvement. That was a terrifying experience, but what I find to be more appalling is when I talked to our hall coordinator about this, and she replied, "People are allowed to think, feel, and react however they want to about this upcoming event." At the event, someone threw 20,000 marbles on the floor to prevent people from entering the venue. Attendees were spat on. Outside, a popular pep band well known to our school played loud music to try and drown out the speaker's message. I share these occurrences with you all to show that despite repeatedly meeting with the university administration, the rules are continually permitted to be broken by left-leaning students. They are, in fact, coddled by our school. The university expresses affirmations and puts together support, solidarity, and celebration spaces. These individuals act out against conservatives without care or consequence and are empowered to act this way because of the lack of action by the administration and university leaders. Conservative organizations do not get the same resources that these other organizations receive. Conservatives often have to hide who they are and what they believe in so that they do not lose relationships or receive a lower grade or face constant doxing, harassment, intimidation, or threats. I went to college with the expectation that I would hear different points of view because I thought it would be a place where young people could come together, disagree, and still be friendly and courteous to one another. However, after 2 years, I've realized that this is not the case at all, and that students who hold opposing views are often subjected to frequent violent threats and other forms of harassment with no accountability. Our founding fathers guaranteed every U.S. citizen the right to free speech in the Constitution. It is an important resource for all Americans, not just a small percentage of them, particularly if they hold different views and ideas than those of others. To ensure that peaceful continuation of the nation, we must all come together and understand that differing opinions and expressing them, we should nevertheless show respect for one another and refrain from causing each other bodily, mental, or emotional harm. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan.
I was alone in a world gone mad. These are the words my grandfather wrote on the day in October 1942 after his father had been shot dead and the Jews in his small Polish town, including his entire family, were deported to a death camp. He was a teenager, alone in a labor camp with a bleak future filled with unimaginable suffering. I have thought about my grandfather's words often in the 32 days since October 7th, as I have watched what I can only describe as a world gone mad. I have seen and heard things on and around Cornell's campus that just over a month ago I could not have imagined. Cornell professor Russell Rickford publicly justified and celebrated barbaric acts of terror as exhilarating and energizing, describing the torture, rape, and murder of innocent women and children as resistance. I see classmates perpetuating age-old anti-Semitic tropes on social media. I walk across a campus defaced with anti-Israel signage and graffiti, seeing phrases such as F Israel and Zionism equals genocide. Anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are inextricably linked. This is evidenced by the Jew hatred that consistently and openly accompanies attacks on Zionism. On campus, I am now confronted daily with shouts to free Palestine from the river to the sea. This catchy chant is not about peace or sovereignty for the Palestinian people. It is a call for a Palestinian state extending from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, a territory that encompasses the entire state of Israel. It is a Jew-hating, genocidal mandate seeking to deny the Jewish right to self-determination in Israel. It is a call to exterminate all Jews in accordance with Hamas's open and unequivocal goal. This chant is not about Palestinian life. It is about Jewish death. Imagine that you frequent Jewish events on campus. Imagine that you live in a Jewish sorority house. Then imagine scrolling on your phone one day, only to discover that a fellow student wants to shoot up the kosher dining hall and I quote, gang rape all Jew pig woman on campus. That is what my peers and I experienced last week when reading the multiple online threats made by a fellow student instructing other Cornell students to assault Jews on campus, to follow them home and slit their throats. This was not just hate speech. It was a call to action and an immediate threat. This sentiment did not begin with that student. Professors and student organizations have been fueling Jew hatred and spreading it across campus with disregard or potentially even with deliberate intent to incite.
Free Palestine! Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism!
Committee will be in order. Committee will be in order. Apologize, Ms. Silberstein. You can continue.
And even after that student's arrest, professors have continued to teach blatant anti-Israel lessons in their classrooms. Students in the course Race, Racism, and Public Policy reported that Professor Lindsay played a video in class claiming that Israel is committing apartheid, in which students felt was an attempt to place blame for the terror attack on Israel. Students in the writing seminar, True Stories, taught by Professor Glaubman, reported that the professor suggested that Palestine is a textbook case of genocide and sought to pressure students who had previously expressed sympathy for Israel to change their views. These not-so-subtle examples of bullying and attempts at indoctrination have a tangible impact on the pervasive Jew hatred spreading throughout my campus. My grandmother, along with many of my family members and close friends, live in Israel. Why are they calling me every day to check in and see how I am doing? Do I feel safe on campus? Is there enough security? Do other students know that I am Jewish? They live in an active war zone with rockets constantly being fired at them, and yet my safety on an American college campus is keeping them up at night. Growing up with the firsthand accounts of what my grandfather endured during the Holocaust, I could never comprehend how neighbors and friends stood by as Jews were rounded up to be killed, and how governments around the world turned a blind eye, until now. Witnessing such unbridled and unapologetic anti-Semitism unfold on my college campus is a testament to the impacts of permitting Jew hatred to fester and infect the mob mentality of impressionable students. It is shocking that college campuses have devolved into echo chambers, fostering animosity, aggression, and bigotry, a shift that is painfully reminiscent of the vitriol and terror that my grandfather endured in the 1930s. Anti-Semitism can no longer be hidden under the guise of anti-Zionism. Disseminating lies about Israel is an effort to validate violence against Jews. I'm grateful for the supportive words from the Cornell administration, but actions speak louder than words. We require tangible measures, including strict adherence to policies that forbid threatening or intimidating behaviors towards any student and ensures that purveyors of violence are removed from campus. No student should ever live in fear for their safety, regardless of background or religion. What is happening on Cornell's campus and across universities in this country is not about protecting expressions of free speech or free exchange of ideas. It is about enabling and even promoting intimidation and the threat of harm to Jewish students and supporters of Israel. It is imperative that decisive action is taken to ensure the collective safety of students. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Ms. Silberstein, and thank you for your courage.
Thank you so much, Representative Fox and Representative Stefanik, for inviting me here today. My name is Talia Khan. I am an undergraduate alumna of MIT and a current graduate student at MIT. I am the daughter of a Jewish mother and an Afghan Muslim immigrant father. I am the proud president of the MIT Israel Alliance, and I am a Jewish student currently immersed in an extremely toxic anti-Semitic atmosphere at MIT. The MIT administration, namely President Sally Kornbluth, has failed to address the crisis of rampant anti-Semitism on campus. There is a radical anti-Israel group at MIT called the CAA. In recent weeks, the CAA's anti-Semitic rhetoric has shifted the culture on campus to such an extreme of intolerance that 70% of MIT's Jewish students polled feel forced to hide their identities and perspectives. An Israeli student whose identity and personal info was sold online for a bounty has not left his dorm room in weeks out of fear due to death threats. For my part, I was forced to leave my study group for my doctoral exams halfway through the semester because my group members told me that the people at the Nova Music Festival deserved to die because they were partying on stolen land. After a postdoc at MIT said that Jewish Israelis want to enslave the world in a global apartheid system, he falsely claimed that Israel harvests Palestinian organs and implied that the, quote, average Israeli is a Nazi. The DEI officer of his department replied by telling us that nothing he said was hate speech and that the organ harvesting conspiracy theory was, quote, confirmed. Day after day, the MIT administration has failed to enforce its own rules on anti-Semitic actors, such as the interfaith chaplain intimidating Jewish students, DEI staff publicly declaring that Israel has no right to exist, faculty dismissing student concerns for their safety by telling them that if they are scared, they should just go back to Israel. CAA protesters blocking the hallways, storming the offices of the MIT Israel internship offices and harassing the staff and faculty there, and inviting dangerous outsiders to campus to join them in yelling hateful and violent chants. This is the same climate of anti-Semitism that has led to massacres of Jews throughout the centuries. This is not just harassment. This is our lives on the line. The MIT administration has punted disciplinary processes to a faculty committee on discipline, which has thus far not received a single one of our complaints. MIT admin has even failed to staff a new task force against hate, which will duly combat anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. This atmosphere is intolerable. Jewish students do not believe that the MIT administration has done an adequate job to make students feel safe on campus. President Kornbluth, please let me go back to being a scientist. Let me go back to being a student. I don't want to have to keep advocating for Jewish student safety on campus. It's not my job, it's your job. Please do your job and act now. And if you can't, I'm asking Congress to do it for you. Thank you.
Thank you all for having me and for giving me the opportunity to share with you my story. My name is Bella Ingber. I am a junior at NYU, and I'm going to try to answer the following question for you from my personal experiences. What is it like to be a Jew at NYU? Being a Jew at NYU is walking to class and passing torn and defaced posters of innocent hostages with the words occupier and murderer written across their faces. It is going to Bobst Library to study and being interrupted by unauthorized protests where students and faculty call for a globalized intifada revolution, an incitement to violence against Jews everywhere, and a call for the annihilation of the Jewish state and my friends and family who live there. Being a Jew at NYU is being surrounded by students and faculty who support the murder and kidnapping of Jews because, after all, as they say, resistance is justified when people are occupied. It is being surrounded by social justice warriors and self-proclaimed feminists whose calls for justice end abruptly when the rape victims are Jews. Being a Jew at NYU has meant being physically assaulted in NYU's library by a fellow student while I was wearing an American-Israeli flag and having my attacker still roam freely throughout the campus. Being a Jew at NYU is experiencing how diversity, equity, and inclusion is not a value that NYU extends to its Jewish students. Since October 7th, the unmistakable anti-Semitism that I've experienced on campus is reminiscent of the Jew hatred I've heard about from my grandparents, Holocaust survivors, who experienced firsthand the deafening silence of their neighbors in Poland and Germany when the Nazis first rose to power. As anti-Semitic rhetoric and actions became more and more acceptable, their communities' shops were looted, their synagogues defaced, and finally, their families were taken away and perished in concentration camps. Today, in 2023, at NYU, I hear calls to gas the Jews, and I am told that Hitler was right. To the NYU administration, you are not free to selectively enforce your own rules. You are not free to refuse your Jewish students the same protections that you extend to others. NYU has adopted the International Holocaust Remembrance Association's definition of anti-Semitism, which recognizes that calls to harm Jews in the name of radical ideology calls to eradicate Israel. To deny the Jewish people their right to self-determination in their ancestral homeland is anti-Semitism that is punishable under NYU's Code of Conduct. I am a proud Jew, and I am a proud Zionist. I am the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. We are not going anywhere. Anti-Semitism and the support for terror should have no home at NYU or any other college campus. We made the promise of never again, and never again is now. Thank you.
We receive support from
And
our
that's
alumni from all over the
And that
world,
support,
from individuals.
and what amount of support is that reported to the federal government?
I'd have to actually look at our filings.
You don't know? As the president of the university, you don't know?
Not that particular number.
It's
No, I don't.
$1.5 billion over the past 3 years. Are you aware of that?
President McGill, that from 2014 through 2019, Penn received a total of almost $300 million in Section 117 funding. Are you aware of the amount that was given by Qatar? Were any of these donations conditioned on the inclusion of a pro-Palestinian curriculum or pro-Palestinian events? Are you aware if any of these donations were conditioned only for pro-Palestinian professors?
I appreciate the question. I want to repeat that we follow all laws and we accept nothing that is inconsistent with our mission of teaching, research, and service. And we would never accept conditions on gifts. My understanding is we have taken no government gifts from the government of Qatar. We have a small number of alumni in Qatar who have given some gifts for annual gifts to schools, very small number.
But almost $300 million.
Congressman, that figure as of funds from Qatar is not one I'm familiar with. That's not what my information tells me.
Do you know exactly how much you received from Qatar in Section 117 funding?
The data I have, yes, I am aware of our 117 filings. Maybe I can follow up with you afterwards. That's not consistent with what I understand our 117 filings show, which is no gifts from the government of Qatar, and a very small number of annual gifts from alumni living in that country.
Do you know what the #1 hate crime in America is?
I know that over the last couple of months, there has been an alarming rise of anti-Semitism, which I understand is the critical topic that we are here to discuss.
That's correct. It is anti-Jewish hate crimes. And Harvard ranks the lowest when it comes to protecting Jewish students. This is why I've called for your resignation. And your testimony today, not being able to answer with moral clarity, speaks volumes. Dr. Gay, a Harvard student calling for the mass murder of African Americans is not protected free speech at Harvard, correct?
Our commitment to free speech...
It's a yes or no question. Is that corrected? Is that okay for students to call for the mass murder of African Americans at Harvard? Is that protected free speech?
Our commitment to free speech...
It's a yes or no
extends-
question. Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
I am asking, specifically calling for the genocide of Jews, does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill. So is your
If it-
testimony
if
that
it-
you will not answer yes?
If it if the
Yes
speech
or no?
becomes, if the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide? The speech is not harassment? This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
The answer is yes. And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be, depending on the context.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual, targeted at an individual.
It's
Fear,
targeted at
pervasive.
Jewish students, Jewish individuals. Do you understand your testimony is dehumanizing them? Do you understand that dehumanization is part of anti-Semitism? I will ask you one more time. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric. When
And is it
crosses into
anti-Semitic rhetoric?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric, when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board.
We embrace a commitment to free expression, even of views that are objectionable, offensive, hateful. It's when that speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies against bullying, harassment,
Does that speech
and
not cross that barrier? Does that speech not call for the genocide of Jews and the elimination of Israel?
When that
You
speech-
testify that you understand that is the definition of intifada. Is that speech according to the Code of Conduct or not?
We embrace a commitment to free expression and give a wide berth to free expression, even of views that are objectionable.
You and I
outrageous,
both know
and
that's not the
offensive.
case. You are aware that Harvard ranked dead last when it came to free speech. Are you not aware of that report?
When speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies, including policies against bullying, harassment, or intimidation, we take action, and we have robust disciplinary processes that allow us to hold individuals accountable.
What action has been taken against students who are harassing and calling for the genocide of Jews on Harvard's campus?
I can assure you, we have robust
What
disciplinary
actions have been taken?
processes
I'm not
with
asking.
actions underway.
I'm asking what actions have been taken against
Given-
those students.
Given students' rights to privacy and our obligations under FERPA, I will not say more about any specific cases other than to reiterate that processes are
Have
ongoing.
any students been expelled or disciplined for bullying, harassment, or these actions that you're listing?
I can assure you we have robust student disciplinary processes.
No. I didn't ask about your process. I asked if any students had been disciplined or removed from Harvard as a result of the bullying and the harassment that's taken place based on their anti-Semitic views in the past months since the October 7th attack.
We consistently apply our policies.
So have any students, can you give me a number? Has it been 2, 10, 20? Or have there been 0 students that have been actually disciplined for their activity? Not their speech, their activity.
Students have been held to account for any episode in which they violated our behavior-based policies.
Do you know approximately how many of those students have been held to account in your mind? Or is that something you're going to keep from public view? I'm not asking for the identification of students. I just want to know how many students actually have been held to a disciplinary standard.
I'm happy to have my office follow up with some specific numbers if that would be helpful to you.
That would be very helpful. I'm frankly surprised that you can't appear before this body going to talk about this issue and not be prepared to tell us whether or not any students, or to the extent or how many, have actually been disciplined for their anti-Semitic behavior in the past months. But you can't tell me that?
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute. For nearly 4 centuries, Harvard has been known for many great things, as America's first college, as the alma mater of 8 presidents, as the most fertile of ground for new ideas and cutting-edge research. Yet now, in this moment, Harvard has become known for a truly terrible thing, for anti-Semitism, for leading a 21st century American resurgence of one of the world's most ancient and retrograde prejudices. And this is in large part because of the words and action, as well as the silence and inaction of President Claudine Gay. We have all now seen the shocking testimony from last week, but to borrow a phrase from Dr. Gay, we need to also look at the context of Harvard having the very worst ranking in the entire country for protecting free speech, the context of President Gay initially refusing to condemn the Hamas terrorist attack and then refusing to condemn the student groups that blamed Israel, the context of Harvard's woefully inadequate measures to protect Jewish students both before October 7th, but especially after, to the point that at the hearing, President Gay would refuse to even answer the question as to whether a Jewish student can feel safe and welcome on her campus. That Harvard has declined to remove President Gay even after Penn forced out its president speaks volumes about the singular failures of that university. Yet Harvard also offers a broader window into what ails higher education in our country. This is a moment of reckoning for American higher education. Our universities cost too much, deliver too little value to graduates, and have become the most intolerant places in American life. Now is the time for fundamental change to reform the American university, and this resolution is a first step. I yield back.